On?
Yep.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Utica, New York. I am joined by my co-host, the one and only Mr. Shawn Fitzgerald from LAF Advisors in Long Island, New York. How we doing, Mr. Fitzgerald? Big days coming ahead. We're getting close, aren't we?
Yeah, second baby's due any day now, so I'm enjoying these last few days of sleep. And I'm getting ready for the waking up every 1.5 hours with my eye half open. So, on these next few podcast episodes, you'll probably see me with big bags under my eyes. But it's a beautiful thing. I can't wait to go through it again. It's the craziest experience you can't even put words to. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we wish you all the best and can't wait to meet the little guy. But folks, we got a special show for you. The first ever second-time guest in the Scratch Agency podcast, Mr. Brett Young, the CEO of Erb Young. And before we get into it, welcome Brett on the show. We had him back on episode 32, where we talked about creating a great culture and just sort of spectacular conversation. So make sure to go back to learn more about Brett in episode 32, and we're going to dive into some specific topics today. But Brett, thank you for coming back and joining us. How are you today?
I'm great. Great to see you guys. Thanks for having me back.
Everything going good down there in Florida?
You know, it's a total shit show. It's a complete disaster, and it's the best case scenario for us. I love it.
Beautiful, beautiful. So here's why we wanted to have you back, because we have talked a lot on the show. We talked with Shawn. Shawn and I talk a lot about what do we want our agencies to be when we grow up, right? So Shawn and I explained to people that we're on the same escalator, but on different steps, right? Shawn's got a few more years than I do. He's got a few more team members. I'm still just a one-man show with a VA. And so we're on the same escalator with different steps, but there's different visions. And I want to just start by saying this for everybody listening, that there's so many different ways to slice this pie, as we all know. You can have the big team nationwide. You can have the corner retail agency, and you can all be successful in your same way. But what I wanted to do was just basically have a conversation around, what are some things that in your experience, Brett, of starting yourself with your team and then building to where you are now, that you realized over the course of that journey, and kind of dive into more stuff like that?
Yeah, that'll be a fun conversation. I'd start off by saying I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So I think it's a never-ending journey. I think it's a question more than a statement, and one that deserves the attention each year in regards to setting the sail and where you're trying to go. Because I think if you don't have that question consistently, you'll end up at a destination maybe that you didn't exactly want to be at. But I think it's also unfair to say that everybody starts out knowing exactly where they're going to finish. I don't think that works. I think we all need a plan, but then the plan needs to be adjusted in accordance to our growth and where we sit. We might think that we want something, and then we come across some different experiences that may change our perception of what successful means, or it may change our idea of what this entrepreneurial experience should look like. So I think, to answer that question for you guys just as much, I think I'm still asking that question. My partners are still asking that question. I think we have a lot more clarity on that now with experience. However, I think it would be I'd be naive to say that once you know the answer to that question, you're good, and then you don't have to revisit that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Brendan. It's funny. I gave a lot of thought to this, and I've been giving this a lot of thought. I'd say over the last probably year and a half, 2 years, probably because I just started having kids, and it's like it just makes you think a little bit differently. And I feel like the conclusion I came to, which is very similar to yours, is I think what you want your end goal to be is evolving constantly. I mean, to the point where it could be on almost like a quarterly basis. What you want your end goal to be is changing. Something that's helped for me, I feel like, is having benchmarks. So when somebody asks me like, oh, what do you want the business to be, Shawn? What do you want LAF to be? Right? Like, how big do you want to make it? And I can't put a number on that. Like I could say, oh yeah, I want to grow to 10 million in revenue, but what is the number really doesn't mean anything,
It's arbitrage.
So
Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, kind of what I've done for myself, which I feel like it helps to have a number, but just make it a benchmark. So for me, like a big benchmark is 250,000 in revenue, right? Once I hit, so it was 100,000, 200, 250. So once I hit 250, like I have it written out. This is how I'm going to hit 250. This is what I need to hit 250. And I have kind of like the goals and the action steps to hit that. And I think that's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like you said, you got to, once you hit that goal, you got to kind of, all right, what's the next step? You know? And that's something
Yeah,
that's helped me a lot.
my dad helped me a lot early on. He gave me some really good advice when I was in college. It was before I
Mhm.
even started my insurance career. It's probably what started my insurance career. He asked me, he said, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I don't know what I want to do at all, and it terrifies me. And he said, well, instead of thinking about what you want to do, why don't you think about what you want your day to look like? What do you want the day to look like? Write it out. Like, what's your perfect day? And that drastically changed the lens in which that I viewed how I wanted to pursue my dreams
Mm.
and what I wanted. Because instead of pursuing something for ego, you start to pursue something because of the experience. And all of us want more because we're wired to be achievers. But more just for the quest of more is greed. And that's not a good reason to pursue being bigger, you know?
Yep.
Now, don't get me wrong. My pursuit is I want a very large agency, very large agency. I want a national agency and I want to have a brand. However, there are some specific reasons for that that are very important to me that guide that quest for me. It's not just to see the premium number go up. It's not just to see more team members because candidly, like it's harder. It's just harder. It comes with more. Like it's more responsibility, more pressure, more problems, more everything. So you really got to love the game. But the guiding principles of what I want my day to look like, have continued to be the feeder on how I back into the pursuit of where I want to be. And then obviously having partners, we all have to be on the same page. It can't just be Brett wants to do this thing and, they don't, or vice versa. But I think we take a look at what we want like our revenue number to be and how much or what staff number we want. And Stephen, like you said, do I want a retail agency where I'm right there on the corner, or do I want a virtual agency where I work with it's more phone internet based and I have a VA team and they're whatever the case may be. And we think about the pros and cons of that from a business chess move strategy standpoint. But to me, that's just an end. That's a means to an end. The end is, what does my morning look like? What does my day consist of? What time am I off? How close am I in proximity of my kid's school and
Hmm.
the ability to go to lunch with my wife, or the ability to be on vacation for 2 weeks and still work while I'm away? Or do I want to be away for 2 weeks and not work at all? Do I have the leverage in order to be able to do that? That means I'm either servicing or selling policies, or I'm not. I'm completely out of it, which means I have to be bigger in order to have hierarchy. There are a lot of questions of how you structure an agency based upon what you want your day, like what does your Tuesday look like? Not my Friday, not my Monday after coming from vacation. Like what does your Tuesday consist of? Boring, middle of the road, nothing going on. What does that day look like? And if that can fire you up and that can get you excited and you're pumped about that, then I say whatever you need to do to build around that, to me that's a starting point.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, is thinking like almost like, hey, what's your why? And then what do you want personally to happen in the end? And then kind of reverse engineer that into how you want to grow the business. I think that
Yeah.
makes total sense. And that's like when I think of like my why, right? I just think of it's a chip on my shoulder, but I use it. I would say it's a healthy chip. So I grew up with basically like little to no family. My step parents didn't even graduate high school. So like I want to build a legacy. Like I want to break the cycle, so to speak. I want to
Mm-hmm.
build a big family. I want to build a successful business. I want to make sure my kids grow up with great resources and a great family. I want to build a great team and help motivate and inspire others.
Mm,
And in order to do that, I have to build a large agency, unfortunately. You know what I mean? For me, how I see it panning out. And I would love to give back eventually.
mm,
And to do that, you have to have some funds. So for me, revenue is important.
yeah,
But I think knowing what your why is too is super, super important.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And and there's another reason if anybody's or listening to this podcast, like they've heard the why, right? Like, what's your why? I've
Yeah.
heard that for forever, and it's just extremely
Yeah.
powerful. It's still profound, and it's still back to the basics. It's important, you know that. But someone reframed that for me a couple of years ago, and it helped me a lot. And they said, what's the meaning? Like, what's the meaning of your journey? Like, what's the reason that you're doing this? And it's just a simple, subtle way of changing that and saying that. It's like, well, what's your why? Sometimes we have this cliche deal that we've went to a workshop and somebody asked us to write our why, and within 5 minutes you put me on the spot and I had to put something maybe down that I don't really necessarily believe, but it sounded good when I regurgitated it back to a group, right? But the reason for your journey, like, why are you, like, what is the meaning of it? Like, the meaning when it's all said and done, like, what does that look like? And so you just mentioned legacy and leaving a mark, right? I say that's becoming immortal. I want to be immortal when I'm gone. I want my legacy to be more than this flesh and blood, right? So, and
Yep.
with a business, I'm able to do that. It transcends generation. It transcends locations. It transcends different people. I'm able to build a vehicle in which I'm able to deliver a message. So
Totally.
I relate to that a lot. But I think for me, when I'm assessing the pursuit, at different points in time, the meaning is more important to me than other times. Sometimes I'm just like, man, I want to get this number because I wanted to get out of production. I knew if I could get out of production, I could do some bigger things that I had, and so the meaning of my journey was to get out of production. Like, that's my
Yeah.
reason, right? Like, it
Yep.
wasn't macro; it was very micro. But then there are other times, as soon as that happened, I'm like, okay, what's my macro? Then it's like, oh wow, okay, the lens just came off. I'm able to really think big picture, so my meaning got big again. Um, which for me, it's to inspire others to be the best version of themselves. Like that is who I was and who I needed to be, and someone helped me do that, and I get an opportunity to do that with this path. And so for me, leading thousands of people is a pursuit that I want to do because I want to leave that mark. I want to make an impact. I want to have left this, world better than I found it. But when I was just trying to get out of production because I wasn't able to get to the things that I wanted to, I wasn't thinking that way. My why was not in the front of my mind. My reason for why I was pursuing something was very micro. And I think that's okay. Like, that is a normal thing, like, we go through experiences, wins and losses, and through those experiences, sometimes, the bigger picture becomes the secondary part of the journey, and the pursuit of the obstacle to get over the obstacle becomes the driver. And that is completely normal. And I think that's important. It allows us to focus in on something. So it's easy on a podcast to talk about our big reasons, but I think sometimes the smaller reasons and the small things of which we're trying to accomplish and overcome sometimes become the chapters within the book. I think that's okay.
Yeah. Now, Brett, if we may kind of just dive into your story and walk through some of those pivotal points for you. I mean, when you went from starting the scratch agency to then trying to get out of production to then I want the bigger team to then I want, the end goal of having the very large agency and the name brand. What were some of those pivotal moments for you? And I know they can be different for everybody, but I think that the context of each moment there can be the same. And somebody that may be listening to this, or maybe Stephen Turnbull, who's struggling with this right now, can say, oh, that makes sense. And this is the direction I should focus on. Could you take us through that journey with you?
So, okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So I want to make sure I understand what you're asking. Basically, what are some pivotal moments within the journey of those reasons that maybe
When
changed or reframed?
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think before I started, before I met well, I've known them for a while, but before my partners and I got together to start Erb Young, before that, my journey started with an opportunity that someone gave me that said, hey, look, here's a book. You should read this. Like, if you work harder on yourself, you should work harder on yourself than you do your business. And if you do that, you'll have everything that you ever wanted. Now, I never read a book in my entire life. I was not a good student. I was going down the wrong path. And personal development completely changed my life. And because of that, I said, "Oh my God, this is a doorway to unlimited. Like someone believes in me more than I believe in myself, and they're giving me a tool and a resource to be able to create. This is incredible." So I was infatuated and fell in love with the idea of becoming more. And so my reason was to do the same thing for other people that someone had done for me, because they genuinely saved my life. I mean, they, I would have been fine, but I would have been at a job I couldn't stand. I say, "What's your number? Like, for me, I would have been at my misery number. Like, what's the misery number if someone can keep you in your job as long as as long as you can when you don't enjoy it?" I hated everything that I did in regards to professional work. I was lost. So me, that was an opportunity for me to say, okay, I want to do this for somebody else, because what an incredible impact. I thought, man, this person just rocked my world. Like, they just completely changed the trajectory of my life by doing this one simple thing that my parents had tried to tell me for years and couldn't get it to click. And so that was the first driver for me. Okay, how do I create a vehicle that would allow other people to pursue a path to unlimited? And my partners shared that vision. I don't think maybe they had the same, they may not have the exact same look of how that looked. They have their own perspective of how that looked, but we all agreed on the fact that, we were on that path of personal development together, and we all were infatuated with the idea of creating that for ourselves and for other people. So we lined up. So that was the first one, and that was the real reason Erb Young was created, was to create that. But then I'd tell you, then in the first 3 years, when you're just scratching and clawing and fighting for every single inch, and it just feels like it's going so slow, and you're just asking yourselves a lot of questions, and that this is the moments that your whole career is made in this time frame, because it's the hardest. It just is, man. Like, yeah, I'm dealing with bigger problems now, but they're not harder. Like, what you guys are going through and what this audience is going through is the hardest part of your entire career. And people need to know that, because they think, is this going to be like this forever? Like, is this like this? They say higher the level, bigger the devil. Yeah, that's true. The devil's bigger, but you're bigger. So, like, it's okay. And you're not fighting to survive. You know it's going to be okay. It's just annoying. But for the first 3 years, my reason was, man, I wanted to be able to stand up on my own 2 feet. My wife was supporting us. She was pregnant with our first, and I was living at home. And then, we didn't want to have the baby at home at my folks' house. So, we went and got an apartment, and I could, barely afford to pay for that. And, we had our first son, and she was supporting us. And I thought to myself, I want to take care of my wife. She supported me all these years of allowing me to pursue this dream that hasn't really shown any fruit. And so my reason kind of retracted. I had this macro vision of helping all these people, but I wasn't even able to help myself at this point, right?
Yeah.
Sounds familiar, right? We have these big goals and aspirations, but it's like, hold on, we need to come back to here for a second. Like, let's live in the space that we're in. So for me, that pivoted to, like, man, I want her to not have to work if she didn't have to, I want her to pursue what she loves in life, and if that means that she wants to work, then more power to her. But I want her to have the choices. I'll go work 8 hours a week, but I want her to have the choices. She's taking care of me, and the biggest gift I could ever give would be to be able to take care of her. So that was my first pivot, is to say, what does that look like, and how do I get there to do that? And then, of course, it's like everything in life. If you just work hard enough at it and you're relentless in pursuit, you'll get there. And so reached that goal. And she decided that she still really liked to do what she did, but she just didn't want to do it 5 days a week. So she works Tuesdays and Thursdays, 3 to 4 hours on those days. And she gets to have her best clients. She develops those relationships, and then she's done. And so that was a dream for me, fulfilled. It said, okay, great. She is now living her life in the exact design in which she wants it. She's literally said, what's the perfect life for me? And she designed it. And that was a huge moment for me to say, man, okay, we've reached this pinnacle. That's pretty cool. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
And then after that, the next reason was, a unanimous decision by the three of us that we didn't want to be a small business. We rallied together and made a decision that that being a small business was the enemy. And I think in life, just like an art of war, I think you need to define what your enemy is. If you could define what an enemy is, then you have a purposeful pursuit in striking it down and making sure that it doesn't creep in. Sometimes it's easy. It's kind of hard to sometimes figure out what we want. Sometimes it's easier to figure out what we don't want, you know? And so we defined what we didn't want. And the reason for that was because our focus shifted from being able to just take care of ourselves back to our original idea, which was in order for us to accomplish what we set out to accomplish here, we need to create a vehicle where people can pursue having an abundance in life. That's not just money, but that's in all aspects of life, which is the same thing someone gave me in that book early on in my life to show somebody, how to have abundance with tools that are given. So from there, we defined what that was as running away from being a small business and pursuing being a big business. And probably the shift, I think we're still in that cycle, as we're still a bigger small business, but we're still a small business, but we're well on our way. The trajectory in which that we're running makes me feel really good about where we're at on that. And the focus has really shifted with this independent operator program. With now we have we have 4 independent operators across the state who are building their own businesses inside of our system. And then we have another one opening we're going out of the state here in October. It'll be our first one out of the state. And then we have another one that just acknowledgement yesterday. So that'll be 6. So with that program, it's been this new revitalization, revitalizing this idea of creating this abundance for other people. And so that has been kind of the shift of focus, which is funny because now it's coming back to what we started the business from. But it's been a cycle.
Yeah, for sure. Brett, how much of this, because when I've talked to you these couple of times now, you come off to me as you're a big believer. You have a lot of faith. You're a big thinker. You have big goals, which is great. How much of that do you think has to do with the proximity of people that you're around that think the same way?
Great question.
Man, everything, right? Yeah. Because we get beat up every day. It's so easy to be a pessimist. It's so easy to be a doom and gloomer. It's so easy to be negative. It really is, man. And I'll tell you, especially for those that are listening to this podcast right now, wait until you have staff. I love my team dearly with everything. They're my best friends. But there's something about having 40-something lives and dramas and shit that's going on and stuff. And it's just you feel underappreciated as a leader. You feel like you're just not doing enough. You feel like nobody sees the sacrifices and the money spent and the resources. And it's a lot, man. It takes a lot out of you. And first of all, that's my own perception. That's our perception. That's not in reality, but that's how it feels. And so it takes a lot of being around the right type of content and information on a continuous basis to not become that negative Nancy, not to become that pessimist, to not think that to think about what everybody's out for, or think that people are selfish, or these negative thoughts and these perceptions. Because what happens is every day we get these kind of chinks in our armor. We get damaged every day, and they start to make us numb to our emotion of looking for the best in people instead of the worst, and all these different things. So I think, Shawn, it's everything, man. I'm lucky to have 2 amazing partners. That's my mastermind of masterminds. Then I've tried to put myself in situations where I'm around, different groups of people that I've either created or I'm a part of. But sharing that openly of what you're dealing with, sharing openly of how you feel about it, what other people have been through. And then for me, my greatest mentors are found in the pages of books. I look to borrow from the experience that's in a library. Those stories just are dramatically impactful to taking people's entire life's experiences, distilling them down into a piece of content that you can consume and really genuinely pursue in your life. So for me, if I'm not around that stuff, man, even being around that stuff, it's still something that I battle with. It's still something I'm challenged with, man. So that's a cool compliment for you to say that to me. I try really hard to make sure that I am being the light and being a
Mhm.
positive impact and thinking big, and I want to. But I mean, it's a daily deal. It's some days are good, some days are bad, man.
Yeah, and I think that's Stephen. The more I think about this, the more I believe that's like one of the main reasons we started the podcast is because we were
100%.
two scratch agents with no staff, no one else around. I opened up an agency in the third bedroom of my house by myself in a tiny little room every day, 12
Yeah.
plus hours a day. And with the podcast, I'm like, what a cool way to be around successful agency owners that are far ahead of us that we get to talk to 1 hour a week
And
and
people who
just
get it.
soak in everything that they have to offer, you know?
That's smart. Subconsciously, what you're doing is you're applying the mastermind principle, right? Like you're the
Yeah,
average of the five people that you associate with the
exactly.
most. 100% believe that through and through. It's the greatest hack you can ever deploy. If you were to deploy any success principle on the planet, it would be the mastermind principle, as Napoleon Hill called it. Just get around the right people. And so subconsciously, you're like, okay, well, I'm not able to be around people on a daily basis that have what I want and that pursuing the things that I want. And how do I do that? Let's start a podcast. Like that's
Yeah.
genius, absolute
Yeah.
genius.
And it could be tough for some people. Like if you have family members, like listen, not everyone in your family is going to be super optimistic and a big believer and a big achiever and big goals. And,
Yep.
and again, you don't cut those people out, but maybe you just give a healthy space from
Yeah.
those people, you
Well,
know?
let me.
My
No, go ahead, Brett.
I was just going to say, I mean, I want to relate to that. I mean, my folks were not very supportive of my decision. I mean, I didn't have a lot of track record in my entrepreneurial career. I'd made probably 30, 40 grand before that doing some different things in my pursuits of entrepreneurship. And I had, I just didn't have a ton of traction, but I had a huge belief I knew what I could do, but they didn't necessarily believe in what I was doing. And then I pulled my brother into this, and there was almost this look of like, oh God, now you got your brother involved with this. So um, now now my parents have done very, very well for themselves. They're well off. They're great achievers in their own right. But I can tell you that what we did in a decade, you know, it trumps what they've done in 35 years. And so now looking back, now it's a great idea, right? Now they look at it, but it takes you being successful in order for it to become a great idea. You're not going to get the acknowledgement from them. You're not going to get the you're doing the right thing from them. You're just not. So if you're looking for that, you're just in the wrong space. You should go work for somebody because they're going to take that burden. That is our job as entrepreneurs. That is our job as agency owners to bear the burden of people not believing that we are capable of doing what we say we're going to do and then getting up and doing it every day. And Shawn, you talked about a chip on your shoulder. I think that's a fantastic thing. I think every person who's pursuing this journey right now should have a chip on your shoulder. I have a very large one. And people didn't believe that I was going to do it. People didn't believe I've gone into presentations early in my career before I got into the property and casualty business, and people laughed at me. They literally laughed at me. I'm sitting down trying to educate them on a product and sell them on on a product that they can purchase for their family. And I had a friend of mine, a family friend, they literally laughed me out of the presentation. I still think about that to this day when somebody tells me that we can't do something or that I'm not worthy. I am worthy, and I don't need other people to tell me that I'm worthy. It's my opportunity to go out there and show it. So if you're listening to this show right now and you're looking and you're waiting for someone to acknowledge you, you're going to be waiting a long time because it will take you until you are successful in order for somebody to acknowledgement. And if there wasn't, if you were already there and they already acknowledged it, then there wouldn't be the opportunity in which that you're pursuing right now. So don't
Mm.
want what you don't want.
Amen to that.
And
Everybody snip that out and listen to that before you go to bed.
for sure, for sure. And just one thing, Stephen. Last thing I wanted to touch on with the chip on the shoulder, and I give you kudos for this, Brett. I feel like a lot of people do have chips on their shoulder, but not everybody uses it the way they should. Meaning, some people have a chip and they use it for an excuse for everything.
Mm.
And then some people have a chip and they use it for motivation for everything.
Mm.
And obviously, the ones that I feel like use the chip for motivation, there's a lot less of those people. But I think it is important to know, like, if you have a chip, try to use that as fuel for your fire. You know, that's kind of how I look at it.
I love that. I mean, it's ownership. You're taking ownership of the fact that, yeah, I have a chip on my shoulder, but I'm still in control. I still have
Yep.
things that I can do, right? I'm not powerless in this situation. I am powerful. Stepping into that identity, and that's what you're talking about. It's like, what do you want your agency look like? Well, what do you want your life to look like? But more importantly, what do you want you to look like? Like, right? Creating the identity of which you want to operate through is one of the most powerful things that you could do. Sometimes the question of who am I, we don't answer that question. So therefore we're lost, right? I am a team builder. That is what I operate from. I am not an agency owner. I am a team builder. I build teams. I build people. I develop resources. I pour into people. I create leaders. That is an identity in which that I operate from, and everything that I do comes from that. So if you haven't identified who you are and what identity you want to pursue your dreams in, you're just going to struggle with, where should I go from here? If I'm a team builder, well, then I'm going to build a big business because that's what a team builder does, right? If I say that I'm an elite sales professional, okay, well, then you're probably going to be in large commercial sales, right? Like, so you're going to build an agency that's built around you being the figurehead for large commercial, and you're going to have support staff. So the structure in which that you go after should be predicated off of the identity in which that you're operating from, not the opposite. I shouldn't decide what type of structure I want and then try to live into that identity. It should be the opposite, if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense. I want to back up a few questions ago that Shawn asked you and put a little bit of a different spin on it about the team that you've created and how much that team helps you. And your response to that was how we know, especially as scratch agency owners, how much we can get kicked down in a day, right? And you said that positive team that you've developed helps you get through that. We also know, the three of us on this call and most of the listening audience know how lonely it can be as a scratch agency owner when it's just you, yourself, and I in this basement office in downtown Utica or in your third bedroom in Long Island. What is your advice for those feelings of loneliness, for those feelings of questioning yourself when you don't have that team to grab that positive energy off of and feed off of? What do you say to those people?
Man, you're in for an unbelievably bumpy, rocky ride. I was fortunate to hit rock bottom before I started this business, and when I hit rock bottom, it was it was just me. It was me and me, and I got really comfortable with the idea of being with me, and I was looking for all this approval outside of myself into that point. And when I didn't get it, and when the world didn't give it to me, it's like it all caved in on me, and then I was left with nothing. And in the emptiness, this beautiful blossoming flower can come out. But until your cup is empty, you can't put anything in it. And so this experience, and to answer your point, Stephen, it's not just being a scratch agency owner. Leadership is lonely. Leadership is lonely. Any type of leadership is lonely. I feel loneliness all the time. I feel like there's just situations that nobody's going to understand. Sometimes I have to get away. I can't talk to my wife. I can't be with my kids. I've got to just literally leave the house, and I've got to process things on my own. And the biggest blessing that I had was that I hit that before I started the agency. So I was very comfortable with being lonely, with being with myself, with being, and I don't know if everybody has that type of blessing. It was extremely painful. It was one of the worst experiences of my life, but it was 24 months of just understanding to the depths of my soul of who I was and being comfortable with me. And that has given me a massive competitive advantage to block everything out and to go and pursue. And that skill set has been what's attracted people to want to follow me, because you know what? They literally deal with the same thing. They're dealing with the same thing in which all of us are dealing with is, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy, right? What if I don't make it? All these self-doubt conversations start to overwhelm the psyche. And most of it is predicated on the fact that we're not getting external things that give us that you can do it type situation. And when you're alone in a basement, you're running. We had an upstairs basement. I was in the second floor when we started ours, but so I call it the upstairs basement. So I relate. But you're not getting that external feedback. As a matter of fact, the external feedback you're getting sometimes hurts it hurts a lot because it's not always positive. So it's very challenging, and the best way I could pursue that is number one is get with people that are in a mastermind group, like what you guys are doing. We have the Be Extraordinary community. I'd love for you, Stephen. I think you're part of it. I think you guys would love to be in it. Find mastermind groups. I know you guys have a mastermind group of startup agencies that you belong to. Like get together with those people, have beers with those people, like go to dinner with those people, like develop relationships with those people. But also don't be fooled that those people are going to give you the energy that you need to push past these types of situations. In my humble opinion, the only way that this works is if you get really comfortable with you. And if it's painful for you right now, and you're not really comfortable with you right now, and you're not really sure of you right now, that's okay. That's okay. You just need to be able to sit in that long enough. Most people don't want to sit in it. They want to distract. They'll go for a stimulant. They'll try to get with other. It could be alcohol. It could be food. It could be with other people. It could be entertainment. It could be stuff to. It could be your kids. You come home. You don't want to think of anything. You just go with your kids, right? It could be any type of stimulant that doesn't allow you to sit in your own mess. If you can sit in your own mess and be comfortable enough with just you and you for a long enough period of time, then what ends up happening is you become bulletproof. You become impenetrable to the external forces because as you pursue and you grow in this journey, the external forces just become more and more and more and more. The pressure just becomes more and more and more and more. So these moments in this early part of your career in this pursuit become the foundation building blocks for you to be able to deal with the next problem. If you don't get these right, you will not have earned the right to go to level 3, level 4, level 5. So don't miss it. Don't wish it was easier, just wish you were better, right? Jim Rohn says that, like, don't don't look to fast forward time because you're going to miss the most important part, which is you becoming. The becoming of the man and the person that you need to become to sit in your shit by yourself long enough in order to pursue what you want it's extremely uncomfortable, but it's so important. It is what is going to attract multiple people to want to follow you because those exact people are dealing with just that. And if you can help them solve that, if you can help lead them out of that darkness, if you can help tell them that's going to be okay, they're going to gravitate to you and go, man, wherever this person's going, I'm going with them because I don't want to wrestle with that. I don't want to deal with that. They've already done it. I'm going to gravitate towards them. And then what will end up happening is instead of them just gravitating you and holding on, you'll reach down and you'll start to teach them how you did it. You'll start to teach them and empower them to overcome that. And that's how it becomes explosive. To me, that's what leadership is, right? I'm most equipped to help the person that I once was.
Yeah.
Right? I'm most equipped to help the person that I once was. And that's what you guys are, that's what this part of this journey is one day you're going to stare somebody in the eyes and say, man, I've been there. I know what you're going through. Here's what I did. Here's how I overcame it. And guess what? It gets better.
Yeah, and I think I think I think back to I guess we'll call them the lonely times when I first opened the agency. Some of the things that helped me, and I've talked about this on a lot of episodes now, but is keeping your mind strong. And I think a part of that for me, a lot of that is tied to fitness. So not that I'm some fitness bodybuilder, but I like to try to get in one workout a day. Early in the morning, it sucks. I get up early. I don't really like it, but I get up early. I do it anyway. And I'm done with my workout. It's still dark out. I know a lot of other people haven't even woken up yet. So it just gives me like a little check of confidence, even something as simple as reading too. Like that, to me, that helps my mind. I just sit there. I don't have to focus on anything else. I'm not getting phone calls. It's early in the morning. I'm focused on, 10, 12 pages, somewhere in that range. Oh. And my focus is on one thing. I'm not staring at a screen. And I think all those things help sharpen your mind,
Yeah, how about eating the salad instead of the burger, right? All these things build momentum, and what they do is they send a message to you that says, I am good enough. I am worthy, right?
Builds
Like
confidence.
I'm 4 or 5 days in a row. I'm 6 days in a row. Like you're building self-worth. All of this comes back to self-worth. All of it. All of it's tied to self-worth. So all these disciplines, all these simple things either send a message that you're not worthy or you are worthy. All these decisions matter because they're building a psychological fortress around your mind. I agree with that 100%, Shawn. I think fitness is a massively understated part of achievement. If I look at the most successful
Massive.
people that I
Yeah.
look at in my life that I'm trying to become or model or be like, all of them are fitness freaks. They're just there is a link between achievement that's physiological, not just mental, right? Like I train the mind by training the body.
Yep.
I don't train the
That's a great
body
way to
by
put it.
getting to the mind. Like I know that if I prime the vessel will do what it's supposed to do, right? If I don't have energy, it's because I'm not giving the body what it needs to, you know? So, which is such a contrast. We think, oh, well, if I get in the gym, it's for my physical fitness, right? It's for me to, look better. It's for me to stay healthier. I don't give a shit about health. I don't because I'm just not in it. I'm sorry. I wish I did. I'm sure I will later on, but I lack the context of having 100 years. I'm in this right now. I'm wanting to work out because I know that it's going to prime my body to perform at the highest level. Now, obviously, I know that there are health benefits to it. I'm being facetious. But the point is, I think people miss that. They think health and fitness is one of those little things on the circle of success that I want to check off and make sure that I'm quote
Make you
unquote
better
balanced
than.
with my
Yeah.
success life. Bullshit. It's directly linked. Like,
Yeah.
show me a high performer and they have a fitness regimen, and so there's a physical, there's a physicality linked to achievement. I 100% agree with that, man.
Yeah.
100% agree, and I do the same thing.
Yep. Well, as we look to wrap this up, I want to make a few points here because in my last question I was going to ask, you answered it in the last comment. So, number one, Brett, you said to Shawn and I just a minute ago that at some point we'll be able to look back and see the person and say, "Man, I was there. I remember that. I'm going to do whatever I can to help you." And I want to personally, publicly thank you for what you've done for me in the exact contents. You have reached
It's
out
cool,
to
man.
check in on me. You've taken a phone call within a 10-minute window of a crazy day to help me with something I was going through. And I want to publicly thank you for that. Number
Thanks,
two,
man.
find the partner, find the mastermind. Shawn talked about like kind of the reason behind this podcast and why we wanted to start doing this. I can't tell you what T5 or Stephen Turnbull's journey 14 months into being a scratch agency owner would be if it wasn't for the relationship I've developed with Shawn, if it wasn't for our weekly scratch agent call that we have on Monday mornings, if it wasn't for those relationships and the people that we surround ourselves with to make sure that we're around like-minded people that are helping us for those lonely times. So if you're listening
It's
to this
awesome.
and you're in that circle, find those people. Shawn, you got anything else before we want to wrap up here?
No, that's all I got. This is great. I'm ready to run
Let's
through a
go
wall.
run through a wall. Exactly. Brett, thank you for coming back. Couldn't have thought of a better person to be the second time guest on the show. So we really appreciate you taking the time and coming back. For anybody that wants to just follow you, you put out great content or reach out to you or anything, what's the best way to do that?
Man, hit me up on IG. It's Brett Young, and it's not the country singer. So it's Brett Young _23. If you hit up the Brett Young country singer, I'm sure he's not going to DM you back. So don't take it personally. And then LinkedIn, man. LinkedIn is an awesome place to connect. It's Brett Young. I'm in Orlando, Florida. And then the Be Extraordinary podcast, the podcast we do, it is not agency specific. It's more achievement driven specific. So if you're looking for different ways, philosophies, tricks, hacks, tactics to become the best version of yourself, join us for a conversation on how we are pursuing that journey, and then with special guests as well. You can go to beextraordinarypodcast.com, beextraordinarypodcast.com. And I appreciate
Perfect.
it, guys. Thank you so much.
Everybody remember, go back and check out episode 32 was the first episode we had with Brett. Besides that, that is another episode of the Scratch Agency podcast. Thanks for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. Before the episode today, I looked, we have 99 subscribers on YouTube. So somebody listen to this, go make that puppy 100. Most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, and own your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.